Hello again, everybody. I'm Dave Rubenstein, editor-in-chief of SD Times. We're here at the DevOps Enterprise Summit in San Francisco, and with me now are Carmen Diardo. He's the technology director at Nationwide Insurance, and MikKersten, the founder and CEO of Desktop. And one of the things that we've been hearing a lot about at the conference is the value stream and the proposition, and we've had some people explaining it to us here. But we want to get your point of view on, making the case for a value stream architecture and what that actually involves. So I don't know, you want to kick that off, Carmen?
Well, so I think, right, one of the things we're trying to do is being responsive to the business. And to do that, you need to understand what it is that's getting in your way of being responsive, right? And I think what we found through, certainly I've learned through my affiliation with Mick is most companies don't really understand, right? They don't really understand, from the time of a customer saying they would like something to actually being able to deliver it, what actually is happening to make, to either make that happen or to disturb that from happening. And no one is really intentionally driving speed that way, right? And so that's kind of the case that we're trying to make here, is that's a necessary component if you're actually going to be more responsive and deliver more quickly.
Right. Now, does that serve as perhaps even almost some kind of a brake on the speed if you have to have that other consideration every step of the way? Or how do you kind of build that in, I guess, in the architectural framework?
Yes, I think we have to look at what these value streams are first. I think just Carmen and I have been learning this together over the last many years as they've proven out at Nationwide and how important it is. And as we've actually looked at how large organizations, how our customer base implements their DevOps transformation, their DevOps toolchain, the agile layers on top of that, and so on. And I think one of the most profound things that I heard Carmen say is that no one sets out to do a local optimization of their value stream as part of their transformation. But really, when we looked at 300 value stream diagrams that we created with our customer base by looking at their whole tool chain, their process models, and so on, realize, wow, that's exactly what they've done. They've looked at their agile transformation, their agile rollout, and they've really created this really elegant stovepipe of how Scrum works with a few agile tools there. And they've got their CI/CD pipeline, and they've done the same thing. And so you've ended up with what we've realized are these sort of they're not end-to-end architected value streams where it's all about delivering value to the business in terms of the number of features you deliver, how quickly you respond to security vulnerabilities, how quickly those are implemented. We've really taken some of the best practices which are required around automation and around agile development, and basically thrown them at the organization, at the IT team, the development teams, and so on. But there's not an end-to-end architecture. There's just this ad hoc architecture of good intentions. And so Carmen and I have been looking at how do we actually, in a similar way to when we had all these back office systems, all these back-end services written in Java, increasingly written in Node and on web technologies, at some point you had to get control of that. That came through service-oriented architectures, and it came through microservice architectures, and so on. But people understood sort of the end-to-end transaction flows, and so if they had all this brittleness and point-to-point coupling, at least you knew that. You knew what to attack. You look at how these tool chains are architected, it's just a complete mess. There'll be 30 Jira servers, all with different models of what a defect is, what a user story is, what done is, no consistent notion of the most important metric that matters, which is end-to-end lead time, right? People will be just measuring what it takes to open and close a story, how quickly it gets how long it takes to get to deployment, but not how much business value you've delivered, because your bottleneck could be downstream with security certifications or upstream with the fact that you're just waiting on wireframe designs. So.
Just a quick notion, right? I mean, we estimate, because it's hard to measure, we spend more than half our time before a card ever gets to an agile team. So even if we completely optimize from a backlog through deployment, that's great, but how about all the stuff that happened between the customer wanting something and our team's actually working on it? And then many times if something's getting behind, it's like, well, we'll just add more developers. Well, that's like kind of the robot example in the goal. The problem wasn't the robots working fast enough. The problem was nobody else was working fast enough to keep up with the robots. So, we really are flying blind here and making decisions and not really knowing what is our constraints, right, to going faster.
Right. So you're talking about kind of taking a goal-based approach to delivering these products?
So I think we're looking at, metrics like flow and lead time, right? And then providing visibility so you can see, like where is your inventory, right? Like, do you have an inventory of stories that are just sitting there waiting? Or do you have or in some cases, we have inventories of we've built things, but they can't get to deployment, right?
Right.
And so where is it that these bottlenecks exist? And where's the data around those flow metrics? And then how do you intentionally architect based on what you see as your constraints?
Interesting. So I know in your talk you had kind of set out a definition of a new role, some kind of a new role in the organization. What would that role be, and how are you defining it?
It'd be Carmen.
Carmen, your role. You're the role.
Carmen's the archetype or the prototype. At least in my mind, because I think what's happening, I've learned a ton from him in terms of how to approach this at this very large scale. When you've got many business areas that you've got to meet, many customers, and a large IT organization. And I think he has taken with a Nationwide this very disciplined approach to defining this architecture, defining the key metrics that matter to the business, like lead time, and looking at how those will actually be implemented by looking at what's flowing through the value stream, rather than having people say self-report, which we know just does not work because people don't usually like to make it completely explicit every week in and week out that they're the bottleneck or something.
Right.
So, for some reason. So what we've come up with is the start of this principled way of looking at the architecture, defining the architecture, and then connecting your value stream network, identifying the flow so that you can identify the bottlenecks, identify the opportunities, identify where you might need to train up a group on a new tool that you rolled out, or you might be missing some tooling, missing some automation, or just missing some skill. And really because we see it as such a critical function to a transformation, and it's basically a forgotten function to transformation. People are investing in tools, they're investing in culture, they're investing in process models, and so on. Sure. But no one's doing this, and they've got these ad hoc architectures, and we believe, at least tell me if you believe this, I believe it, I'm going to say it in our talks, should figure that out now, that...
Speak now or ever hold my peace.
that these transformations, these really large Agile and DevOps transformations, will succeed or fail based on the quality of the value stream architecture. Because if you don't know what your bottleneck is, the CIO, no longer the IT leadership, does not know where to invest. There's always the knee-jerk reaction to hire more developers. If it's anything like what Carmen described, where it's upstream and half of your time is ahead of the story being started by development, it doesn't matter how many developers you hire. So you won't release that constraint. So because it's such a core part of the transformation, if there's not a person like a Carmen assigned to the success of this thing who understands it, because it's a fairly, these value streams are kind of technical and complicated, right? They almost look a bit like software architectures. They involve, they can involve hundreds of teams, for example, and dozens of tools and process models. If someone's not responsible for that, doesn't understand how to evolve it, and then how on earth are you going to pull this off? So,
sounds like the business analyst role kind of evolving in a way.
Kind of. I think it's more, I don't know, the people I've met with that get this the most, or have had it thrown at them without sufficient actually given a sufficient budget oftentimes, it'll be people who've done enterprise architecture, maybe because they know how to show boxes and arrows on PowerPoint slides to leadership. I don't know why, but it's been thrown at those kinds of people. Sometimes the people who get people who've done a transformation, like product owners for the tool chain and so on. I think, Carmen, that's some of what you've done. But whoever it is, it has to be someone who's, I think, deeply technical, who understands the moving pieces, again, where to invest, where to involve, and can see the end-to-end thing rather than just the CI portion of it, or just the agile portion of it, or just the requirements part of the tool chain, or the ITIL, or whatever it is. And someone needs to own it end-to-end in the business. And if you're an IT leader, you don't have that person, I think it's time to start either looking at it or worrying. So.
Interesting.
Well, because I think, right, really, if you look at it, and especially organizationally, right, we talk about horizontal thinking, right, because we tend to have the horses grew up in silos, right? The unicorns kind of grew up already thinking horizontally or product based because that's where they started.
Right.
Horses started in these vertical silos, right? And then we said, okay, we have to go horizontal, right, to cut across those silos. But they're almost like I kind of visualize them as these planks that actually are driving the value, and where the silos should be supporting them, they actually kind of crush them, right? Because all the HR and all the budgets and all the prioritization is still in the people who own the tools, perhaps, right? And it's really this horizontal plank that needs to be supported if you're going to drive value. We've tended to look at our whole tool support structure as efficiency, right? And really we have tended to do more and make business case around efficiency. We haven't made them around speed. And speed, makes you have to think differently. Are you intentionally architecting it to reduce your lead time?
Right.
That's not something you typically think of, have someone thinking about when they're trying to say, I'm going to architect how all these things are going to work together so that I can improve the delivery capability, the speed from customer concept to getting feedback and driving that loop.
One last question. How long have you been on your DevOps journey, as it were?
Hold down line? No. I mean, to me, this is a progression. We started doing Agile over 10 years ago.
Okay.
And I think, as Mick said, when we took a step back, we did a very good job optimizing story backlog through a set of iterations, right? Then we provided lean. So Agile gave us quality and predictability. Lean got us efficiency, but DevOps was speed. And we started to think that way. The first deck, I called the primordial DevOps deck that I found one day, not that I was looking for it, was from 2013.
Wow.
Right. And then I actually met Mick at the initial conference here in 2014.
Right.
And, I just think this conference really then opened our eyes, and all the people you can interact with that really accelerate. So like this year, we actually have 7 people here. I have 2 peers that presented. Right. So, in some ways it's been a 10-year journey, but probably the DevOps part is probably around 4 years, I would say. So that was a very long answer to your question.
Right. And do you think you're near the finish line, or is it just going to be a constant evolution from here on out?
I kind of quote Churchill. I say, we're not at the end. We're not even at the beginning of the end, but maybe we're at the end of the beginning.
Excellent. Very good. Well, thank you for your time, gentlemen.
I would just add that they're pretty well ahead for most companies I know being at the end of the beginning.
Right.
So.
Excellent. Very good. Thank you, MikKersten and Carmen Diotto from Nationwide. Thanks, everybody. See you soon.